So we will look at each one of these plans as we go through the other processes and other knowledge areas, including the change management plan, configuration. We looked at the performance baseline. We have not seen the other baselines. We look at them afterwards, one by one. And the next process, and remember, we are still in integration management. We have finished only 2 processes, and we have 49 of them. Integration management gives you a very good picture. After that, understanding the other areas may become a bit simpler because you get used to the ITTO diagrams, you get used to the PMI's approach, you get used to the technique names, input names, output names, so it becomes gradually more easier and easier. So that you can apply them, apply the learnings in your projects. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, then the next one is direct and manage project work. Once the plan is ready, it's about implementing or executing it. That's the purpose of this. So can you tell me what should be a key input for this process? There is an input which is mandatory for this process in order to execute the work. What should be that mandatory input? Before I show you the diagram. And also, what is the key output of this process? This process, by the way, direct and manage, it's about providing direction to the project staff. It's providing the management to the project staff to execute the work. And what happens as a result of execution is the question. And what is required for execution? Okay, yes, so Venkatesh, thank you. The project management plan is the key input and the deliverable are the key outputs. Very good. And Sudarshan as well. Thank you. Project plan is an input. Appreciate that. So that's why we see here the same as you people have expected. Project management plan is the key input on the left side. Whatever plan is ready, sometimes it may take a few weeks to freeze the complete plan. Whatever version it is in, maybe version 1 is a simple plan, use that and start executing. Otherwise, it may be too late to start the work. And deliverables is the key output. So that's how you try to understand every ITTO diagram, every process diagram, rather than trying to memorize it. What else happens when work is executed? What kind of things happen? By the way, lots of documents may be used. I won't be explaining each one. We will look at each one of these input documents when we go through all the processes, because each of these inputs here become outputs in other processes. So at that time, I will explain to you what these are. The key inputs I will definitely tell you. The question to you is, what else happens during execution apart from deliverables? And that's what you see here on the right side. Yeah, Shadab, project implementation plan. Yeah, so that's, could be an input, could be an output, depending on what that means, implementation plan. So that's a project management plan for us. Sure. Again, depending on industry, you would have implementation plans or a commissioning plans. Yeah, so that can also happen. So deliverables is one output. And there'll be some issues during execution. So issues will get documented. So therefore, issue log is created in this process for the first time. It may be updated later on in other processes. Updation is okay, but the first time it will be created in this process. That's why these are the unique outputs of these processes. Change requests may happen during execution. Somebody might face a problem. Somebody might think that the time is not sufficient. They may ask for more time. And they may put in a change request for asking extra time or adding some resources. The original resource estimate would not have been okay. So they may ask for more people or something or some machinery. That's why we may have change requests during execution. And during execution, a lot of discussions might happen and there may be changes to other areas. As long as the change requests are approved, then we can go ahead and update those relevant artifacts. Yeah. Some of them don't need approval. You can go and update the assumption log anytime. You can update a risk register anytime. Yeah, that's not a problem. Stakeholder also you can do, but requirement document, we can't just update it. If it is already frozen, then we need to put a change request to modify the requirement documents. Yeah, so some of the documents will be properly change controlled or version controlled, and some of them will be easy to just update at any time by anybody. Yeah? And the last thing you see here is work performance data. What is it? What do you think is this work performance data? What happens when people are working? When they are, if I'm an IT person, I might do some software design, programming. I might set up an email system or a website. If you're in medical industry, you would prepare maybe a discovery of a molecule or create a new drug. So it's all like that. So what kind of data gets generated during execution? And these are basically the status provided by the people. They might say, I have actually used so much money. I have used, I spent so much time. So let's see an example of that. It's basically ongoing information about the work progress. So if you look at this outputs sheet, you see the second one, work performance data, the raw information about the work performed, collected regularly during execution, and the primary input for project control. Only when people are mentioning how much they have completed, what is their progress, only then the PM can take some controlling actions. So that's raw input is known as data. So data comes from execution. And deliverables, those are the unique outputs of a project. Change request, we already seen that. Issue log, other plans could get updated as well. And let us see some of the other inputs here. Sorry, I'm going back. Look at the inputs, project plan. Enterprise factors and process assets can be used. There may be project planning templates. Execution policies may be there. Shift working policies may be there. There may be changes which are approved, which have to be implemented. Once the change is approved by an authority, by change authority or a change control board, or by a CAB, change advisory board, then those changes have to be approved. The change have to be implemented. Therefore, approved change requests also become an input because they need to be executed through maybe modify a deliverable to fix a defect, to extend a timeline or something. We'll come back to these changes afterwards in change control process. Or since maybe it's already given here, let's see it. When do you need change request? What are the various, I'm curious about your environment. When do you make change requests? Or when do your clients, a very simple example is a scope change. But apart from scope change, can you think of anything else for a change request? Forget scope change, schedule change, budgetary changes. What else can change, which requires a change request? Yeah, Mohammed has this change order. Could you actually clarify the change order? As far as I know, in some industries, they use a change order as a verbal request for a change. PMI doesn't use the term change order. They actually use change request, but in construction, I think they have change order where they want to change a design, and the client calls up and or a designer calls up and says that the design will be changed, and that's a change order. But please clarify that from your industry. Requirement changes, yeah, Azan, thank you. Requirement changes may happen. So if you look at this here, there may be changes to take immediate corrective actions. There may be an issue. For example, a team member resigned and we want to bring an immediate replacement at a higher cost, so that will trigger a cost change. Something may happen in the future, preventive action. We may have to procure some materials in advance because later on maybe the shipment will take too much time because of lockdown or something. So why don't we procure in advance? Which means they may have to be approval from the procurement department to purchase in advance. Yeah. So those things which are non-standard, therefore we need a change for that. defect fixing. There might have been a flaw in a product, and to correct the flaw, somebody might need more time, more money. They may need some more machinery to fix the defect, new machinery to fix the defect. Therefore, defect repair also becomes a change request. In many companies, we have noticed that defect repair, the moment there is a defect happening, or a bug, sometimes you call it, it's considered as a change. If a defect requires, let's say defect doesn't require more time or money, it's okay. But still they will log it as a change request and say that the change doesn't require any additional time or money. But they still log it. They want to track the number of defects. So they do that. Yeah, thank you, everybody. So change order, requirement changes, and Gagan has said change in the scope. Rajesh, you said variations. Yes, there could be variations. Huh? Okay. Lots of other documents have come in as input. Change log. We look at all of them afterwards. Change log, lessons learned register, milestones list, project communications. These are communication artifacts like meeting reports, bar charts, Gantt charts, dashboards. Those are known as project communications. Presentations about project status, list of milestones, lessons learned during the project. A record of all the changes is known as a change log. We have to understand where is this created, in which process is a change log created, in which process is lessons learned register created. So far we know where the project charter is created, where the project management plan is created, where the assumptions log is created, where are the deliverables created, that we know. But these are in other processes as outputs. Project schedule, requirement traceability matrix, what is it? Risk register, risk report. So look at all that afterwards. Please study them eventually after the course. But we look at all of them, everything. That's all. So we got eventually the outputs of the execution, and we have the. There's one thing I have not explained to you: the work performance data. As I was telling you, these are the data from execution. So let's look at some examples. Just give me a moment. I'm just bringing up an example here. Data is good, but data doesn't give much meaning. When you're discussing with people, not as part of a review, but generally when people are giving you information or input, they can mention anything. They might say 2 deliverables are ready, 3rd one is in progress, likely to be delayed by a week. These are some of the data, raw data, which comes from execution. That's known as work performance data. Somebody might say they have started capturing lessons. It's going on well. Design process is not fully okay. There was some email system failure, because of which report could not be sent. Some people have already onboarded the team. Meet and greet session was arranged. SME subject matter expert has requested for the software. Some materials were procured early. Supplier proposals, what is the status? Some sensitivity of some customers or stakeholders to location changes in a project. So if you look at this, there could be lots of stories like this in a project. These raw stories are known as data, but data doesn't really help much unless we act on them. Data has to be investigated further and analyzed. For example, why is this delay? So we may have to ask them, why is this delay? And when we get the response, it becomes information, more meaningful. So data becomes information the moment we put controlling into it. As a PM, you need to convert data into information by putting monitoring and controlling into it, by asking questions. What is the delay? And you can ask them, okay, there is a delay, but when do you think we can deliver it? So it's a forecast. It was supposed to be delivered tomorrow, but since you're saying it's delayed, when do you deliver it? They will say, sorry, not tomorrow, but day after tomorrow. So it's a forecast. Yeah? So analysis, deep analysis, root cause analysis, trend analysis, earned value analysis, whatever, and then forecasting. When you do this, it becomes information. So look at information afterwards when we come to controlling processes, but data is the basis for information. Some of you, if you're into IT service management, you might have heard data becomes information information becomes knowledge, and knowledge becomes wisdom. So that's another concept like that. And if I go back to the tools and techniques in execution in this process, direct and managed project work, the only main thing I would say, like people would generally have discussions and all that during execution. They will do their job, but they will need some tools and techniques. For example, they may use a repository, a project management information system. They may require a repository or a database where the project plan can be stored and pulled out. If you are the PM, you will put the plan into a repository where people can pull out and see them. Yeah, so that's known as a project management information system. There could be a collaboration or a messaging system as part of PMIS. It could be a website where people can log in and communicate with each other, submit ideas, put their timesheets, pull the reports, whatever they want to do. Yeah? So that's known as a project management information system. So it's like a backbone of a project. It can offer even tools like project management tools like MS Project or Jira or whatever, yeah, can be there as part of the PMIs. So that's the PMI. So that's the only main technique which is seen here. And you don't have to restrict yourself only to these techniques or tools. There can be many more as part of your organization. There could be workflow tools, yeah, to assign the job, because this is about assigning the job and make it happen, make them do the job. Yeah, I just going to mention it. I think it's a question from Ijaz is about the PMIS. So PMIS is a repository, like a database of where all the plans, status reports, raw data can be put, reports can be created, people can collaborate, communicate, yeah? And it could be a website. So that's, imagine you have got a project with multiple locations, and how do people actually communicate? How do they know what's the plan and all that? So you may need a more elaborate system where people can easily collaborate with each other and look at the plans and information and all that. That's why PMIS can be a very simple one or it can be a very complex electronic one. See this example here. What if there are multiple project leaders and suppliers and customers? They have to rely on a single repository. And that should allow you to, it should also cater for version controlling and other things like, change management. It should be possible to pull a form from here and submit a change request. And so if this person is raising a change request, if the supplier is raising a change request, then the PM should be able to approve that request in this system. So change control, contractual documents, contractual management, everything could be included in this PMIS. The more features in this PMIS, the better for the project, particularly in complex, large projects. Yes, I got your question. Thank you. Yeah, it's the work performance data, request deliverables, knowledge, etc. Yeah, that was basically the data becomes information, information becomes knowledge, and that becomes wisdom. DIKW. So that's the. I think it was that what you wanted to know. We look at how information looks like, not now. When we go to the monitoring and controlling process, we look at example of how data converts to information. Yeah? Like when there's a delay, then how do we explain the delay and how do we forecast? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, hi Murli, Manoj here.
Yes, Manoj, yeah.
Yeah, Murli, just wanted to take your confirmation. Vri Malhotra, she's going to join. So can I allow her to join this meeting right now?
Is she registered actually?
Yeah, everything is done at my part. I just wanted to take go ahead from your side.
Yes. If registration is done and payment is done, they can join. Yeah.
Perfect. That I have already done. Yeah, done. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, then all right. Next, I'm just thinking it's already 1:40 almost. Yeah, maybe I think it's a good time to take a break. Yeah, particularly for those in India. Most of you are, I think some of you are from Saudi. So, sorry, from the Middle East, some countries, maybe Saudi Arabia as well. Then might be too early for you. But I'm just proposing that we can do a half an hour break right now. And we haven't done any questions, but we'll come back to the questions after the end of the chapter. Yeah? Some questions on these topics. We'll do a few questions. We still have 4 more processes to go. The next one which is coming up is manage project knowledge. And then after that, we will do the monitoring and controlling project work. Then we have the perform integrated change control, the change controlling stuff. And then we have the close project or phase. And once we do that, we are covering the end-to-end project management. Overall, integrated view, holistic view, high-level view. And once we finish off that, then we move into individual chapters like scope management. Then we look at scope planning, scope control, defining the scope baseline, user acceptance of the deliverables or the scope. Then we move on to schedule management and all that. Yeah? One by one, we will do that. Okay, so with that, please let me know, everybody, how is the session going on? Just like last time, I'd like to know some feedback at this time. And I think it's because it's lunch here. Normally we do a 32. We'll take a slightly longer break, maybe 40-minute break for lunch, so that everybody can have lunch and come back. Yeah, that's a good. No, we can do that. And yeah, just want to take a feedback from everyone on chat if things are okay. We'll come back again with more exam questions and tips. Yeah, I haven't really shared with you the websites yet. Please take a look at this here. I've got these links here. I know the problem with sharing these sites is all of them are competitors for us. So I'm going to tell you anyway, the paid sites, paid is not a problem. There are some exam simulator sites, which I will mention afterwards. But you can actually look at, for example, pmbypm.com, yeah, or masterofproject.com. They have a blog there. And then PM Study Circle. Particularly the first one is really good. pmbypm.com lists many free sites for question sets, free practice questions. This is a single link to many other websites. In fact, I have picked up the remaining from probably from that one. Yeah, and these are 2 others websites where you can get some more free practice questions. They also have paid questions with maybe more difficult ones, more realistic ones. But these questions, I've seen them, they're also really good. Yeah? The one which I have received from us is from, those are really excellent ones, really tough questions. You should please practice those 200 questions what we have sent you. And during the class, I'm showing another one, which is about 130 questions. Those are for class practice. But I won't be able to practice all the 130. Therefore, we'll pick some of them. And please do practice from that also. So I got at least 200 plus 130, about 330 questions from us for you to. And then these ones. Yeah? And then afterwards, I'm going to show you which are the study guides which you can purchase. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to put that links in chat as well. Yeah, so I started getting feedbacks. One of you has said that sessions is okay, but concern, how shall we remember the stuff? Very good point. There is so much actually. And it is indeed, information overload. Therefore, this 4-day course, I'm not expecting that everyone will listen to me all the time. Though you can understand very well, but it's like too much, isn't it? 8 hours and continuous flow of information. And it's just, exposing you to some of the terminology, some of the methods, some of the practice questions. Therefore, you have to definitely go back and study it few times. Many people have actually studied for 2 to 3 months, sometimes even 4 or 5 months before they go for the exam. It's not like an exam where, some people, they do a class in 2 days and on the 3rd day they write an exam. It is not like that. So, and if it's The challenge, the PMP challenge is overcome when you have good learning and good practice. That's all. If the learning is weak and the practice is weak, then it becomes a difficult exam. Otherwise, not. Though I agree that yes, there is a lot of things to remember. No doubt. Yeah. And yeah, thank you for. So that question was from Ankit. That point. Thank you.